This is The Shift, Stories of Resistance and Resilience, a multi-platform conversation series produced and hosted by Travis Rivera, the professional storyteller. I believe that we must embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. So this series aims to share perspectives, insights, and stories from professionals around the world about the role that resistance and resilience plays in our personal and professional lives. So, tune in, listen up, take notes, and recognize our shared humanity. This is The Shift. Hey y'all, welcome. I am so excited for today's conversation. I have literally been looking forward to this for weeks. I love everyone I meet with and talk to, obviously, that's why I invite them to the show. But this particular conversation feels especially relevant and it resonates deeply with me. Hello everyone, for those of you who are new to the Shifters community, my name is Travis Rivera. I am a queer Puerto Rican femme disabled man based in Atlanta, Georgia, but Jersey boy by roots. And I am the CEO and founder of The Professional Storyteller, where I embrace the power of stories to create a more inclusive world. And I do that through 5 pillars of activities: choreography, coaching, consulting, speaking, and writing. And I am the host, producer, and creator of The Shift, Stories of Resistance and Resilience, which is a multi-platform series this year. So this will live stream on LinkedIn. Hopefully it's live streaming now. And we will release it staggeredly over the next couple of weeks. And so you get delayed repeats on YouTube for those who want to watch the video. And then you have it on podcasts like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you stream your podcasts. All right. So welcome. I'm just checking in with Melissa, my colleague, to make sure the live stream is working. We'll see what she says. But today's guest is someone that I've known. I don't know how I came across your profile. I know it's been a long time. And I don't know how the hell we have not met yet in person. I don't know how. I feel like we keep putting shifts in the night, right? Like whenever we it's like we just miss each other at certain times. I know we were both. I was trying to create change this year, but I absolutely despise Vegas. It is my least favorite city to visit in America, and I just did not want to go.
I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. I feel that way about Miami. So
I was born in Miami, so I can't say that out loud. But Miami is fine to visit family and dip in and dip out. But Las Vegas to me is just something about it. It just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't do it for my soul. But I knew you were there recently because you went to Creating Change. You talked about it on your podcast.
Yeah.
But today's guest is someone that I've admired for years, someone that I've been rooting for, praying for from afar, and someone who I will always uplift and amplify because their work deeply resonates with me. What they represent is so important. I'm going to try not to cry because I have a lot of makeup on. I haven't read your damn bio yet. But today's guest on The Shift, please join me in welcoming Dr. Jonathan P. Higgins, also known as Dr. And
DoctorJonPaul, yes.
Dr. is an award-winning educator, professor, national speaker, freelance journalist, thought leader, and media critic who examines the intersections of identity, gender, and race in entertainment. Named by the National Black Justice Coalition inaugural Emerging Leaders to Watch and Business Equality Magazine's top 40 LGBTQ plus people under 40, their work has been featured on sites like Essence, Ebony, Complex, MTV News, Out Magazine, BET, and Entertainment Weekly. A Culture Strike 2021 disruptor, Black boy/girl rights fellow, and Twitter Space Sparks creator, Dr. is a trailblazer who is creating, sharing, and crafting the stories their ancestors didn't get to tell. Dr. Higgins is the inaugural Director of Strategic Media and Advocacy for Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance and has held positions at Turin Entertainment and Edith Productions. They have consulted with multiple brands on inclusion projects, including United Artists, Amazon Prime, Fox, the NFL, Apple, Disney, Instagram, BuzzFeed, GLAAD, and most recently, Ulta Beauty. They are the creator, executive producer, and host of the BFF Black Fat Femme Podcast, which was developed via iHeartMedia's Next Up initiative in 2021. And their podcast had gone on to be named one of the top Black podcasts to listen to by both Ebony and Pride Magazine, and being named both a Webby Honoree along with a Shorty Award win for Best Lifestyle Entertainment Podcast. Their forthcoming debut memoir, Black Fat Femme, revealing the power of visibly queer voices in media and learning to love yourself, was acquired by Wiley Global and is scheduled for release on March 25th, 2025. And you can pre-order it now. Dr. John was kind enough to give me a little sneak preview of the book. And when I tell y'all, do not rush to pre-order from an independent bookstore, preferably, or wherever you order your books from. Like, go now. Like, pause this, open up another window. It's fine. You can watch the replay of this exact conversation. This book has made me cry within the first 30 pages more than I'm willing to admit publicly. I told Dr. I felt like I was crying every few pages. I can't remember the last time a book or memoir, especially I read a lot of memoirs. I can't remember the last time a memoir made me cry this much. And y'all, Dr. my guest today on the shift. Welcome.
Yay. I am so happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Same. Thank you for accepting my invitation. Thank you for always being so receptive to my invites.
Always.
And I'm just super, super thrilled to be in conversation with you. So obviously I read your amazing bio. And so I always ask guests the first two questions, the last question of every guest. So who are you outside the professional highlights I read in your bio?
Wow. TBH. So this is hard. I always find this question hard. Not because it's a hard question to answer, but I think because in our lives, and I say our lives as marginalized people, we often are not given the space to just exist. Like we can't exist unless we have accolades behind us, right? We can't unless we have degrees, unless we're working at a big company, unless we have a big title, unless we have a lot of money. And so I've been working, to figure out who John is, who Dr. is outside of the work. And honestly, I will say I'm very, as much as I've done, I am very lazy. I like to say it lazy.
This episode.
I'm lazy. Yeah, I'm very lazy. Lackadaisical. I like to just go with the flow.
What's your sign? What's your sign?
I'm a Leo.
Oh, okay.
So it tracks, because when you think about the lion, right? The lion will get up and do what he or she or they got to do when they need to do it, right? But what does a cat do? It like to rest, and that's me. I am by nature, I love to rest. I just love to, and I'm talking about not even just like, there are people who, I love to rest, I want to go on vacation. I want to stay, I want to be in my home, I want to be on my couch, I want to watch TV, I want to eat all the treats. I'm just a very, very, like, when I'm not working, I just like ease. I think ease is very much who I am. But I'm also very funny. I love to laugh. You'll learn that quickly about following me, and even in my book, you'll find that I've taken some really. Are you allowed to cuss on here? Because I know it is LinkedIn.
This is okay. I believe in being authentic, and I put all the explicit labels.
Okay, because that's also me. I'm a sailor, honey. I love to cuss.
I've taken some. Do you know Babette Martinez, the Redefined Professionalism?
No, I don't.
Okay, they're the founder of Coral, which is a tech startup, but his work centers around like workplace authenticity, redefining professionalism, and like the impact that trying to mask has on our mental health. And so ever since I met with him, I've been like, yeah, say whatever you want. It is a live conversation, so people are going to hear the raw truth. Yeah, so please come as you are in all forms.
Okay, I just want to make sure. But I was going to say, I've taken some really messed up, really fucked up situations in my life, and I tell them in a very funny way. And I think that's been, something that I've just kind of had to learn how to do over time, to not. I've had to seek out comedy. I've had to seek out things that I find funny. I've had to learn to laugh more and to laugh loudly. I know that's not a word, but just being more boisterous with joy is something I'm always looking for, any type of joy. Right. So it can be, like I said, it can be reels. It can be something I find funny online. It can be a comedian. It can be other friends I have followed. I mean, I even think, some of the some of the ways that people have found me is because I've taken some really messed up things in the world and I have been able to kind of repackage them in a really funny tweet or that's what people know me from. People really know me from, my Twitter days and being able to really, like I said, me and Clarkeisha will go back and forth about some really messed up things in this world. And just really trying to find the joy and the laughter and all of that. And so that's
Yeah.
really just me in a nutshell. I'm very easy, like, in terms of just, life. I'm trying to always look for ease and I'm always looking for a good laugh.
Yes, yes. And, that ties in great with the next question I'm going to ask you, which is what is your personal concept of resistance and resilience
Mm.
as a concept, as an idea? Because to your point, I also appreciate comedy and storytelling. Ada
Yeah.
Rodriguez is one of my favorite comedic storytellers. I'm really
I
loving,
love her.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm really loving Michelle Bouchoir and her comedy
Mm-hmm.
special on Netflix, and also her series on Netflix. And and I have an affinity towards female comics because I just think that women
Right.
balance how to be funny without being mean and crude better than most
Mm-hmm.
comedic men I
Yeah.
know. And
That's
so,
real.
what is your personal concept of resistance and resilience, especially given the times we're living in?
Yeah. So I think the biggest part is, is not shrinking yourself in this
Mm,
moment. And I actually set this in a space at Creating Change. So I'll go into this kind of the story as a context, before content conversation, right? Um, I initially was, in this room, we were talking about basically the presentation in itself was about, all of these orgs, before we truly got into the way that the world is getting rid of DEI per se, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. For those who don't know, this whole conversation of was like, what will our world, what will workplaces look like? What are companies, specifically nonprofits, too, doing to stay afloat or to think long term if DEI goes away?
mm,
And so there was this whole conversation that was happening, and I heard so many Black and brown folks in the space talking very much in the mind of what white supremacy is exactly doing, right? What they're doing to, this, we're folding this into this and we're taking this title away and blah, 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 and da, 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 and all of these different things. And I sat in a room and I could feel myself getting so frustrated because I'm going, this is exactly what the right and what white supremacy as a whole wants us to do. It wants us to hide away. It wants us to tuck. It wants us to move words. It wants us to do all of this stuff. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I can't agree with any of that. I think a part of our liberation, a part of resistance, a part of resilience is becoming louder with who you are in the wake of this. And I understand there might be a lot of things we lose in the process of trying to, acclimate to this world that's continually getting worse by the day or feeling like it's getting worse. But I think that that's the powerful part of it, right? It's only getting worse because the world recognizes you exist. They are actively pushing back on you because they want you to tuck yourself away. And that's what the whole MAGA concept is, right? The whole notion of make America great again is this notion of when Black people weren't vocal, when Black people were scared to speak truth to power, when Latinx people were scared to talk about, immigration rights or to talk about all the things that impacted them and their livelihood, right, around what was going on in their lived experience, right? The idea that Native American people have basically, for years have been saying this country is terrible because of the way it became a country. So, like, I say all of that to say, like, I'm not saying anything I don't think many of us already, for those of us who might be watching, we all kind of know all of this stuff. But I think for me, the way that I've been able to push my personal concept is this is and I even told my org this, as a nonprofit, we were going through this conversation a couple of weeks ago. And I said, I am sorry, but I cannot work for an organization that is wanting to so quickly fold and tuck and move and things. And my boss got it. She was like, okay, we'll keep working like normal until they come for us. And that's literally what it is. When they do come for us, we'll be ready, we'll be prepared. But I'm in this place right now that my resistance and my resilience is my existence. And it's I'm everything, and I say this too in my book, I'm everything the world hates. So there's nothing So why I'm not doing any of that. And if you think, and this is what I tell people all the time, and you've probably seen this on my social medias too. I tell people something: if you're gonna come for me, don't miss.
Mm-hmm.
Don't miss, because I'm not scared. I'm prepared. And I tell people all the time, I am prepared. And so that for me is what resistance and resilience is. I look at Marsha P. Johnson. I look at Audre Lorde. I look at James Baldwin. I look at, Malcolm X. Hell, I look at Dr. Martin Luther King. Like, this is not the time for us to be tucking and ducking and diving as we're trying to move, into 2026, 27, 28. This is the time for us to get louder and get prouder and to get stronger and to find community. And I think that is my personal concept. Y'all not, I didn't work this hard to get this free to go back into some, to go to the back of the bus. No, no shade, no mess, no tea. You know what I mean? Like, I've worked very hard to get to this place, and I like being here, and y'all gonna see it one way or the other.
Right. And you said my existence is resistance and resilience. And I think there is no better way to embody that than that statement. What I had to tell my mother many years ago, and this is when I first started being femme in public and all that, because people would stare, and and my mom struggled with my sexuality. She struggles with my gender identity in some ways, even to this day. Not as much as back then, but even though she was upset about who I was becoming, her mother bear instincts were to rip out anyone's head who may have called me a slur in public or looked at me a weird way. And I told her, I was like, you cannot meet their nastiness with your own version of nasty in this regard. I was like, and you can't ask me to hide who I am because you're afraid for my safety.
Right.
He said, I'd rather die looking fabulous than live a life not fully myself. I mean, when I go, take me out in my blaze of glory, honey. Do it, make it quick. Hopefully, it's not as quick, as painless as possible, and make sure I look good when you do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I'm gonna go out,
I just want my nails to be done.
Yes. Like, right now my nails are not done.
I tell my people all the time, if I go out of this world, the one thing I want is to make sure I have a feel. Just make sure. Just make sure mama got a feel, because that's all I care about, really.
Yes. And I said to them, I was like, I don't want to be buried. I don't need a casket. Don't put me in boxes after I die. We were never meant to be in boxes as humans. Cremate me, spread my ashes in a field of sunflowers, and call it a day.
Yeah.
But it's that, and I think this is what's so scary about this time, if I'm being honest. It's like, this is what our ancestors, our queer ancestors, our Black and brown ancestors endured. They endured the physical violence for existing. And I never thought in my lifetime that it would feel like a 1960s, 1950s, 1940s era all over again. And not because I thought we were in a post-racist society, right? Because Obama was not elected because he was Black. He was elected because they rather have a Black man be president first than have a white woman be president, right? And there's many ways that patriarchy will continue to be reinforced, right? And so what's scary to me is thinking about the fact that now when I go out, even though I live in Atlanta, it's a really progressive bubble, and in Georgia, there are certain places I don't go to at night. There are certain bars I won't go to if it's too crowded.
Talk about it.
There are certain things I won't do anymore
because
not that I'm trying to avoid danger. I mean, obviously, I'm not looking for danger, and I'm not going to stop living my life. But I'm also going to be smart because I'm from the hood. Street smart is a thing, okay? And so I have to ask you this next question. And this question, I'm going to try to get this interview without crying. So bear with me, y'all, because I just feel the tears in the back coming out. To be Black, fat, and femme in a world that often is telling you that you are not worthy of love, of equal rights, or your full humanity. How do you continue to love yourself, Dr. JonPaul?
Yeah. Bitch, not you trying to have me up over here in tears too. No, I try not to spend a lot.
Barbara, I am a student of
I know.
and Barbara Walters. So
I think all of us with some journalistic degree, right?
yeah,
Obviously I'm a comms girl. I came
yeah,
up through the
you get it, you
comms,
get it. You know how we.
and I had to take a couple journal courses. I could do a press release. My mama's
Okay,
good with
yeah,
her PR
you
skills,
are.
right?
So you get it.
We all have that, element of how to ask a question, how to engage a convo
Yeah.
and get folks, emotional and touch on the emotions. And I will say, I don't spend a lot of time these last couple of months. I'll say this. I have been very intentional about not spending a lot of time focusing on the rights, the ways that the right is trying to take my rights away. I've been intentionally not spending a lot of time. Like I told myself, I said, the next 4 years, I told myself going into this year, I said, my next 4 years, it's not going to be quote unquote fighting. It's going to be, how do I continue to maintain what I have, but also to continue to remind other marginalized, trans, specifically Black fat femme kids, right, queer kids who don't see a life for themselves in the next 4 or 5 years. And that's what actually in my book that I will say this. It was so funny. Always, as I'm a storyteller by nature, it was funny because when I was doing the audiobook, there was a box of tissue in front of the microphone, and I had asked the audio engineer, I was like, why are these tissues here? He was like, oh yeah, sometimes people cry when they're doing their audiobooks. He was like, this was on the second day. Well, no, first day. On the first day, I saw the box of tissue and I was like, that is so silly. I don't know why people would, why would you be crying during the, reading your book? That's insane. But at the moment, I hadn't read the book from beginning to end. And so in the audiobook session, that's literally what you're doing. You're reading the book from the top of it and you're reading the book down to the bottom of it. And so all that to be said, when I got to a certain chapter, and I'll let that be a surprise to those of you who listen to the audiobook or to those of you who read the book. Baby, when I tell you I was bawling, I had to like stop reading because I was in tears reading back what I had written. And it was not because I was just so proud of what I had written, but I was thinking about the babies who are seeing so much of this happen and are scared to death. And so I think when you ask the question, how do I continue to love myself? It's not something I specifically do. It's just something I feel like I innately wake up every morning going, girl, you ain't got no choice, because you got all these, now and again, I recognize I don't have a huge platform, but people know who I am. Yeah. People know my work. People listen to the show. People, people are buying the book. People are excited for. So there are all these things, I've been to certain schools and I've had youth, and I say youth meaning, I've been to colleges and I've had folks follow me since, 2016, 2017. And they said, I've watched your journey and I've watched everything you've done and I've watched how you continue to stand, and I'm so proud of you. And thank you for being you, because it has given me X, Y, and Z. And so I know that. And so, when you ask this question, how do I continue in a world that's telling me every day that I'm nothing really? I'm disposable. How do I continue to love myself? I just do. Because I recognize all of this is, I used to see, and I think that was the part of the book that I actually did get really emotional around. I used to wake up every day feeling like who I was and all the elements of my identity were a curse, right? I felt like they were a true curse. And then something just one day it snapped. And I said, do you realize how much, and I talk about this, like being who you are to certain degrees, right? A lot of the stuff the world hates about you. When I say the world, I'm talking about white folks and all of that. They hate you because it's a superpower, because they can't fathom in their mind's eye how you can continue to be so joyful and so loving and so spiritually free and in a world that's telling you you don't have that. And so I think that's the reason. Like I've really reshaped the way I look at my identities. Yeah. I don't look at them as curses anymore. I look at them as things of like, if it comes time for me to go to the pearly gates, if that's where we're going, and God was to say, reincarnation is a thing. Do you want to go back down? But what would you change about going back down? I wouldn't change a thing. I would still want to be Black, and I would still want to be queer. And I would do it 3, 4, 5 times over. Maybe I'm a little good on fat because it's hard. Being chubby to an extent in the world is a little tough. I was told, can you give me some jeans to just make it a little bit easier for me to keep the weight off? That's all. I don't hate it. I'm just saying, can you just give me some better jeans so that way being chubby is not the option, right?
Right.
And it's not saying that I hate being fat either, right? I recognize I could be doing all of these things, but I choose to live in this body the way that it is because it is my body, and I feel like I'm happy in this body. But I say all of that to say, I think that's how I continue to love myself, is by telling myself like every bit of me that the world is saying is a curse isn't. It's a blessing, and it's my superpower, and I'm going to use all of those identities to get myself to liberation.
Yeah. And I think I always say authenticity is a daily choice. And for me, loving myself is, okay. I'm a match of vulnerability right now.
Yeah.
Growing up I was born disabled, and when you grow up low income in a Black and brown community in Wynwood, Miami, you don't think about race and poverty. You think about the one thing that makes you different. For me, the one thing that made me different from all my cousins and relatives and neighbors was that I was disabled, and I was physically disabled, and I was visibly disabled for a long time. And for a long time, I thought that was a curse. And had it not been for my disability, I don't think I would have discovered the power of my journal and the power of storytelling. Because I often wrote when they would make me skip gym class because the activity was too dangerous for someone with a disability, right? And as I got older, my disability became less apparent, and my queerness became more evident. People stopped seeing me as a disabled person; they started seeing me as a queer femme activist or whatever. But people don't think about every day I live with a disabled body. Every day I deal with muscle spasms and stiffness and chronic fatigue and mental illness and all these other things that are compounded. And sometimes, it's hard to love yourself. And one of the things that I am working on in therapy is like, why can I see myself the way the world sees me when they love what I do, right? Like, why can I see myself the way a colleague, right? A colleague or a friend or a lover or a family member might see me. And I really am hard on myself. I am my toughest critic. And I said this in my TEDx talk, because I said this in the workshop that inspired the TEDx talk at Harvard when I did it, which was that embracing yourself is harder to do because we know all of our darkness. We know all the things we've done that we're not proud of, that no one else knows, right? And sometimes being who we are is hard to love. And not enough people are having real conversations about why this self-love revolution being infiltrated by white women in particular and wellness influencers is so rooted in capitalism, right? That it's actually you're actually not thinking about the communal aspect of self-love, because the actual word self makes us think it's individualistic. And there's a component of individualism in self-love. But what people don't think about enough is the communal aspect, the communal love, and that self-love and communal love together is the love that we need as humans, as social beings to thrive, right? And
right.
And I don't know if you can resonate with this, if this resonates with you, but I think oftentimes people are drawn to me because of my light and the work I do and how I look and how I move through the world. But they never want to give me space to be fully human. It's like you become this activist, this speaker, this educator, this author, this person, and it's like, yeah, that's what I do. That's my work. That's my purpose. That's my calling. But I'm also in my 30s. I'm also queer as hell. I'm also living in a metropolitan city. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. And there's never enough space for nuance. And there's never enough space for imperfection, especially in community.
Yeah.
And I think that right now, the reason why I published this book in 2017, which is a hybrid of poetry and essays, is because there was no representation of queer, disabled, Latinx folks not being tied to immigration. A lot of the queer narratives around Latinidad are tied to immigration. As a Puerto Rican, my family members and I have not been immigrants since the 1800s, since the pass of the Jones Act, and so I can't relate to the immigration aspect of Latinidad and queerness, right? But what I can relate to is being Latinidad, queer, and disabled, right? And there was no book out
Yeah.
there that was kind of sharing that kind of narrative in a mainstream way. And that little book that was self-published in
Mm.
2017 has opened so many doors for me. And I want to get back to, and this is really important because I think your memoir is going to shake shit up. And so I'm going to go out of order for the interest of time and get back to the other
Mm-hmm.
question if we have
Mm-hmm.
time. But I have to switch gears to your book, which we've been talking about loosely, Black Fat Femme,
Yeah.
which made me cry, like I said, in more ways than one. It made me cry more in the last few days than I've cried over any book in a long time. I think the I think the last time I cried that much over a book was Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, transphobia aside, Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix, and I believe it
Mm-hmm.
was when Dumbledore died.
Oh, okay.
That
Yes.
gutted me. Like when Dumbledore died, that
Mm.
was like, like that hurt me in ways
Mm-hmm.
that I can't even explain to this day why that hurt me so much.
Yeah.
But what became evident to me within the first 30 pages of your book was that learning to love yourself has not been an easy task when you have to confront the
Woo.
trauma that being a black, fat, femme, queer person in a world not embracing those intersectional identities. How do you make the daily decision? I said to me, it's a daily decision for me. How do you make that daily decision every day to be authentic to yourself and to love yourself for exactly who you are?
Mm. You know, well, this is the gag, right? So I don't, and again, I don't know if I, now reflecting on my book, I don't know if I make it very clear, evident. And maybe one day I'll probably write or I'll probably engage this topic more. I definitely think I talk very heavily on the idea of what my life was like trying not to be fat and also trying not to be femme. But I don't think I inexplicitly really talk and dive into this idea of like what my life was like with me trying to push back on being black, right? Or we're not embracing my blackness. I talk about the idea of like in my family, we didn't really engage. Like blackness wasn't something we really talked about. There were subtle things my mom would say to me, and there were subtle things that I kind of just knew growing up in a, and I tell people in the book and also in my work, I tell people I grew up in the Inland Empire, and a lot of people don't know a lot about the Inland Empire because the Inland Empire is one of those. It's what I like to call flyover city, right? So in California, if anybody is from California or anybody is from SoCal, most of the time when you talk to people, the only three cities that people ever really know is San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Those are the three cities that anyone really truly knows or cares about. If you're adjacent to California or you've been to California a lot, then there are other cities that people will know or will talk about, but very rarely does anyone ever really talk about the Inland Empire. And so growing up between, and I talk about this in the book, like growing up between Compton, which is a very black city, or at least what was a very black city before the whites moved in, and growing up in San Bernardino, which is still a very black city, a very impoverished black city. There was a lot of ways that I was told that blackness was not liked or valued or important. And so I internalized that. And so for a very long time, I was doing things to make myself less black. I was doing things to make myself less fat. I was doing things to make myself less femme. And it was all because I was being told, the whole concept of no. And that's where this book's title comes from. I
Mm.
don't talk about this person per se in the book, but there was a moment in my life where someone said, I don't like black fat or femme guys, when I had shared with them that I was into them or that I was interested in dating them. And so initially the book was supposed to be called No Black, No Fat, No Femmes. But it didn't really kind of align with, what we were trying to do. So that's why we dropped the no and we just said Black Fat Femme,
Yeah.
revealing the power of, visibly queer people in media. Right. So there's this whole thing to do. But I say all of that to say this long journey of me talking about what I'm talking about when you ask this question of like, how did I kind of make the daily decision to love my authentic self was really having to kind of go backwards to go forward, right? I talk about this in, like you said, in my TED Talk, I talk about this, the power of unlearning things. I had to unlearn all of the stuff that I had kind of collected in, and I forget who it is that talks about the invisible knapsack, but I, as a child into my teenage years, into my young adult years, I had collected so many traumatic and awful experiences around all three of those identities. It made it easy for me to not like me per se, right? Like I was living in a body that I hated. I was living a life that I hated. I was looking in a mirror and visibly seeing someone that I hated. And so then when I finally kind of, like I said, there's a part in my book where I talk about it, and trigger warning, I do talk about suicide and suicidal ideations in my book. I a lot of the part of me loving my authentic self was getting to that point where I had to look at myself and say, either you're going to continue, like literally it was my breaking point. It was, girl, you're going to keep living this life and be miserable for the rest of your life, or you can stop fighting it, embrace it, and learn to love it and have the best life that you know how to have. And that's exactly what I did. Like that was literally what I had to do for myself to become. And so that is what I embrace now. You don't like you don't like how black I am or how much I talk about blackness. Okay, that's your problem, not mine. You don't like how fat I am? That has nothing to do with me. That has everything to do with you. I've been on planes where people have been like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Well, bitch, buy me a first class flight and then I don't have to sit next to you, right? Like that's the kind of energy that I carry, right? You don't like how femme I am? Okay, well then close your eyes. Like that literally is how I move now, where it's like none of this has anything to do with me. I could see if I was a terrible person and I was coming in and I was always ready to fight and I was always ready to argue and I was always looking for like a reason to, but no, most of the days I'm chill. You're the one that's tripping out when I'm in the room, right? I didn't say nothing to you. I didn't even look your way, right? I don't even know who you are. And so you're the person with the problem. That has what has helped me learn to love me. Like, girl, this ain't got nothing to do with you. This got everything to do with these people in this room who don't know how to act when you're in the room, right? And a lot of it, like I said, I think a lot of it is because people are innately triggered by folks like ourselves. I wouldn't even say myself, ourselves, right? People who are so comfortable in who they are and people who like who they are, who love who they are, because this world doesn't celebrate that, right? The world celebrates. I tell people,
right? We have the audacity to we have the audacity to show
to be
up,
ourselves. Well,
be ourselves.
But think about it. Yeah, it's when you really think about what self-hate is, it really ties back into capitalism. I tell people all the time, how much money would companies lose in bleaching if black people didn't hate their skin color and stop bleaching their skin, right? Then that goes out of business, right? If fat people just said, fuck it, I'm gonna work out because working out is fun to me. I don't Peloton because I want to lose weight. I Peloton because I love the Peloton instructors. I love the music and it gives me movement. That's it. Because my job is very sedentary. I sit in a chair for literally almost 6 to 8 hours a day. I need to be I need some type of movement because my body will start to feel very stiff. My back is already feeling stiff, right? So like, that's the kind of stuff, but I don't buy into the whole, I'm going to starve myself and I'm going to run and fuck that. I'm not doing that. I've been there. I hated it. I'm not going back to it. And so all that to be said, if and when you stop hating yourself, companies stop making money off of you. People stop making money off of you. And I think that's been a big thing that I've realized too, of like, oh, I'm keeping a lot of these companies in business because I hate who I am. Got it.
And so I think self-hatred, which is it's disgusting. This does take me back to that question about the podcast. I'm going to read that question because I really want to get to that question, and we brought up capitalism.
Yeah.
So segue into that one. And sometimes, I do my sequencing of questions, and then I'm like, let me change the sequencing, and I'm glad I did because this actually
you're fine.
Flows better. To me, child. In a recent episode of your podcast, BFF Black Fat Femme, the episode titled "The Dopamine Hit," you and your co-host Joho dropped so many nuanced truths about diversity, equity, inclusion, capitalism, and how complicated it can be to engage in a system that was never meant to be equitable. When I tell y'all, you and Joho were just dropping so many gems, I was like, getting my day started today, listening to the episode, doing my research as I always do, and I'm just like, whoa, 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 we gotta talk about this. And what do people need to
Mm-hmm.
consider about how to mitigate, and I'm using this word intentionally, how to mitigate harm when consuming in a world not designed to provide equitable alternatives. And so, just to give you the
Yeah.
listeners and the viewers some background context, in the episode, you all were discussing boycotting things like Target. You guys were talking about the need for 2-day shipping, the economic access and where you live geographically compared to where you can go shopping at, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There was a lot of nuanced things there. And you all were saying some pretty
Mm-hmm.
radical things that I agreed with, but I thought pretty radical ideas and things that people are not talking about, which is that everything is nuanced, right? And so there is no true way.
Very.
There's no true way to be equitable in your consumption when we don't live in a world designed with equitable alternatives. And so what I call myself
Right.
is a conscious capitalist. And a lot of my
Mm-hmm.
friends who are far left, they don't like that. They don't like that I admit to being a conscious capitalist. They don't like the fact that I'm
Mm-hmm.
not an abolitionist sometimes, or and the same way that they are. And I said, well,
Mm-hmm.
this is my truth. I was like,
Right.
I grew up extremely poor. I'm not going to sit here and say that
That'll do it.
I don't want to. I'm not going to sit here and say I want to be poor like that the rest of my life. That's not what I'm striving for. But I'm also someone that's going to give people my last $10 if they need it more than I do. I'm also that person that's going to open up my home
Mm-hmm.
and feed people because that's what we did in my community. That's how we do culturally in my family. Like we may not have had a lot of
Real.
material things, but baby, we always had enough rice and beans to give
Just
somebody.
yeah.
Right? We always
Mm-hmm.
had a couch they can crash on for a couple of nights. We always had something to help people. Right? That communal way of living. And so I say I'm a conscious capitalist because I try to be conscious about how I yield capitalism and the money I gain for my business and things I do and how I give back to people. That
Right.
consciousness, I think, is how I try to mitigate harm. But
Mm-hmm.
there is not
Mm-hmm.
enough nuance in a world that wants to be
Yeah.
escapism, in a world that wants sound bites and digestible 90-second explanations of shit because they're too lazy to learn and read. I don't want to say lazy, sorry, because they
Yeah.
refuse to take access and learning, right? And there's many
Mm-hmm.
ways to learn. I'm not talking about going to college or any of that BS. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about just learn things, read a book, watch a video, listen, talk, have conversation with people, right? Like some of the smartest people I know in my life never even finished high school, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they have a
Real.
lived
Real.
experience and a depth of wisdom that they gain through lived experience, through their life, through their trauma, through their
Yeah.
triumphs. And so I
Mm-hmm.
want to go back to asking you this question, which is how do you mitigate? What do people need to consider about mitigating the harm when consuming in a world not designed to provide equitable alternatives?
Yeah. I love that you ask all these questions. So this is where we started in the episode, and this is where the conversation kind of led, and me and Joho, we talk a lot offline before we get on the mic. And so a lot of this came from like our personal private conversations, and we were like, okay, we need to do something around this. But what I will say is this: I am a true believer that, and I might get in trouble for this, I believe
Your
that there are a
trouble?
lot of people who just I say get in trouble. Um, I believe that a lot of what we're seeing online around like these boycotts and a lot of this, you shouldn't shop here. We got to do this. We got to do that. A lot of it is performative activism, and I say that not to shame people, but I say that to say that there are a lot of people who are just right now trying to be noticed and trying to posit themselves in a way where they can be seen and they can be heard and that they have a platform that people should take them seriously around their platform because
Mhm.
they're super anti-capitalism, blah, blah, blah. But you will probably find, and I'm not going to say about all of them, I don't know these people, so I don't make a general sweep that people, Dr. Higgins is being general. No, I'm just saying this is what it feels to me as somebody who has been in it. A lot of the dolls and a lot of the girls who are truly in it, you're not going to hear them talking about, and that's what we talk about in the episode. A lot
Mhm.
of the dolls who are truly doing what I believe is the work, they are looking for ways to say, okay, don't shop here, shop here.
Mhm.
The dolls who are truly just boycott, okay, boycott, but what else? And that is literally what the whole episode is about.
Yes, it
I
was
have
so
literally
good.
said that.
It was
Don't
so good.
tell me to boycott something
And not
unless you
consume.
give me an alternative
Right.
to a world that is equitable, right? In a world that is equitable. So I can't shop at Target. I can't shop at Walmart. Where in the hell am I supposed to get my hair stuff from? Okay, well, I can't go to Amazon, but nobody else carries the do. And when I do carry it, they only carry maybe one or two of the products from the line that I need. So you're telling me to go to Sally's? Okay, so who's going to help me? Like, I'm even thinking about that right now. Okay, so I can't go to Target. I can't go to Walmart. I can't use Amazon. I got to go to Target. But also, I have all of these things for work that I have to do. And I also have to take care of my home, and I also have to take care of my child who might be sick. I also may not have a car. I may not have a Sally's in my area. So what else? Do you know what I'm saying? So like, that's the stuff that I need people to think about, right? Like, the system is set up this way intentionally. Yeah. And yes, you can buy it, you can opt out of it. And I say, if you want to opt out of it, yay for you.
Yeah.
Do you, boo.
But that's also a privilege, right? To be able to opt out of something, right? And I think you and I were talking about this show. Like, as a disabled person, I don't drive because I have a lot of anxiety. I had a traumatic car accident as a child in Miami that just...
That's fair.
That left me traumatic. I know how to drive. I have the skill to drive. And also, as an entrepreneur, I don't want that fixed expense of having a car and a car note and car insurance and gas and incidentals and tires, because the roads here are trapped. And the way people drive here, honey, my insurance would be through the roof. And so I had made a choice economically to live. If you're in the Atlanta area, you know what I'm talking about. I have made the choice to live in a residential area that is still very much a metropolitan city suburb that is very walkable. And Atlanta in general is not very walkable, but I live in a very walkable neighborhood in Inman Park, in the first suburb of Atlanta. And so I'm very fortunate to be able to afford to live by myself, to live as a full-time artist and creative entrepreneur, and not need a car per se, because I can get around other ways. That being said, you know, I made a choice to go to Costco and take almost a 45-minute train ride and walk 10 minutes from the train station.
Right.
Because I wanted to use my Costco gift card. And I want to support Costco, right? That was a choice I made. Right. And so there are things that I try to do. Like, my book is only available on Amazon. A lot of people tell me, I don't want to support Amazon. Okay, well, you can buy directly from me, but it's going to cost you more because now I have to pay for shipping. Now I have to pay for the shipping supplies. And so, and you get a signature, you get a bookmark, but it's going to cost you more. Right. And so it's like, it's okay, but you just need to know that's going to cost you more, right? And so, and for some people, they're like, oh, that's no problem. I prefer to give you more of the profit anyways. Okay. For some people, the $4 shipping can be a deal breaker for being able to get the book, because they rely on Prime delivery, which they pay $6, $7, depending on what status you have, to get that service, right? And so now you're asking someone who's already financially disadvantaged to spend more money to do what? To do your performative activism, that to boycott certain things. It would take a collective. Right. Hundreds of us would have to stop shopping at Target. And the truth of the matter is, although it's starting to feel a lot like the 1960s, our generation does not have the same level of tolerance for discomfort that the revolution requires.
Right. And I'll say that, and that's what I was saying on the show. I was saying that on my episode, that I am that girl that can admit that I don't like being uncomfortable. Yeah. And so that is part of why it's hard for me. And I have no problem with saying it. That is what's hard for me about not using Amazon. That's what's hard about me not going to Target. They're convenient, right? And I know it's built that way intentionally, right? But what do I do while I'm in Target? Okay, well, now, like I said, the do is owned by a Black woman. So when I go into Target, being intentional about making sure that some of the products I buy specifically, are owned by Black, brown, whatever the case may be, right? Being intentional about who I'm purchasing while I'm in Target. Yes, I know Target is problematic, but at the same time, everybody's problematic.
And that's how you mitigate the harm, right? And that's a way of mitigating the harm.
I'm mitigating the harm by not just going into Target and just spending willy-nilly, right? I'm going into Target and I'm seeking out the brands that I know. I know Tab's brand is in there, so I try to shop Tab's brand when I'm in there. I know that the Do is Black owned, so I try to buy my stuff from the Do. I'm doing what I can, with what I got. And I think that this is the thing, I'm already in a place right now, and I'll just say this transparently. I'm tired. I'm tired of constantly like everything being, and again, if you don't rock with my politic, you don't have to. You don't have to rock with Dr. Higgins' politic. But my thing is The world we live in is already super exhausting and it's already complicated. Like I said, I'm gonna go back to my first statement. I want some ease. So if ordering from Amazon means a little bit of ease for me while I'm out here trying to help Black and queer people get free, amen. And if
Yeah.
you want to judge me for that, go for it. Everybody else in this world
Yeah.
already judged me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to change nothing to me. And that's the thing. I'm not saying that I'm blindly going in and being like, oh, I support Amazon. I don't support Amazon at all. What I
Right.
support is them making my life easier so I can do what I got to do to keep doing what I do. And
Right.
if it means that I can't get this product at Target, or I can't get this product at, if I can't get this product at Sally's, or I can't get this product, I'm going to order it from Amazon because it just makes my life a little bit easier. And
Yeah.
it's just, again, that is the scope of the way that the world moves and the way that the scope of the world works. And we just kind of have to learn to live in it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's it. I have to ask you this. I asked it of every guest, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you. And by the way, y'all, go pre-order their book. It comes out March 25th. As you know, they recorded their own audiobook, so I cannot, as someone who has had a hard time reading traditional books after my ADHD diagnosis, audiobooks have become the way I've gotten back into reading a lot. I just finished Untamed by Glennon
I
Doyle,
love
and
that.
it was such a great book. And so I cannot wait to hear your audiobook and read your book corresponding with that. And I'm going to get, whenever I see you in real life, I'm going to bring a copy of your book so you can sign it for me. Because I still have a bookshelf and I'm still a traditionalist when it comes to real life books. I just need to bring
Yeah.
that along
I
with the
love
audiobook.
that.
Yeah. There are people of this work, and we were talking about this pre-interview, so I'm trying not to get emotional. People always tell me, "Oh, why don't you have more followers? And why don't why don't more people know who you are? And and you're just as good as so and so, or whatever." And I know they mean that from a good place. I know they're just trying to hype me up and say you deserve more opportunities and more exposure. But what people don't understand is that I am not moving at the pace of my ego. I am moving at the pace that the universe has designated for me, because I believe in divine timing. Because I came up in that era of the mid 2010s, writing activists. Everyone had a thought piece out in 30 seconds. You don't know how the hell people wrote so quickly, and some people even plagiarized and blah 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 blah. Like, it was a lot, right? And so, like, for me, that was no shade, by the way. People are about to come for me for what I just said. It's true. Some
Well,
people, I wasn't meant to be shady. I was just saying that some people were so quick to
well,
write text, produce things, that because they just want to have their name associated with a hot
right.
topic, right?
They
And
just
and I
want their
and I
name out
started,
there. Yes.
yeah, and I started doing that, and I was like, this is unethical to who I am. This doesn't feel right to me. And so I stopped being that kind of activist. I stopped being that kind of speaker and writer where I had a response for everything. Because you know what? I don't owe anyone a
Right.
damn response to every single thing that happens in the world, because I don't have the energy. I don't have the expertise on every single subject. And honestly, I don't give a damn about every single thing that y'all care about, right? I just don't.
That's the
Right?
real part
And
for me.
so,
I don't really care about a lot of the stuff that I
yeah,
see.
I just, like, you know what? I saw someone post, well, Beyonce's country album wasn't really country. And I'm not part of the Beehive. Don't come for me, Beehive. I don't necessarily care about being part of a Beehive. I like her as an artist. I like some of her music. I don't like all her music, right? But Four made me a fan of her music. Beyonce, the self-titled album, and Lemonade are still some of my favorite albums from her to this day. I don't
Yeah.
necessarily enjoy Cowboy Carter as much as I enjoyed Renaissance. But just because it's not my cup of tea doesn't mean it's a discredit to her. It's just like, not everything is meant for every
Right.
single person, right? But rather than debating that white person who said that's not a country album, I just rolled my eyes, laughed, and kept strolling, because I don't have time to be debating trivial things like that when there's real shit happening in my life that is life or death, right? And so I want to know, what do you hope to shift in society through your life and your work?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me that I'm hoping to shift is, one, I'm hoping people will start to recognize that they have their lived experience matters, that they have something that they've lived with or that they've experienced that really could help shift someone else's life, right? I mean, I think about it, right? Like, so I was like I said, I was at Creating Change, and I had a person come up to me, and they said that to me. They said, I hope you know, they go, I know you've talked about this and that and the other, blah, 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 but I hope you know that what you're doing is truly making a difference. And I go, thank you. I appreciate that, because
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to hear it. And I think about that often. I hope that what shift in society is kind of to your point, right? That we stop rushing, quote unquote, to be the biggest voice in the room, and that we stop rushing to be the most successful and blah, 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 all those. Like, I hope more of us will start telling our stories and speaking from a place of truth, so that way we can encourage other people to speak from a place of truth. But not only just, because again, sometimes too many people in a room speaking can be a lot. I hope that we can encourage people to not even, what's the word I'm looking for? I think the biggest thing is that I just want people to live and to be able to know that they have the right to live the life that they desire. And if it means, and I say this with love, I say this, I'm gonna put my hand on your shoulder when I say this. If that means that the girl across the street wants to be the biggest capitalist and the most messy femme queen, I want to celebrate her too. If the doll says, I want to be out on the line and I want to be, I want to find liberation and I want to fight and I want to be, I want to be an abolitionist. Okay. An abolitionist. Okay. You have that right too. Like, I just want us to be able to live in a place of truth and to be okay with that. And I'm that girl that lives right in between it. I'm a label whore, house down boots. You gonna find some type of label on me daily. I'm gonna
I am
just
not a
tell
label
you right
whore.
now.
I'm not a label whore. I got my first
Woo!
designer bag as a gift last year for Christmas, and I was like, "Oh, what is
Mm-hmm.
DKNY? I don't know what that is." And
Baby, mother
it was
is a label whore, house down
I am not.
boots.
I was a Targetista, and I
Mm-hmm.
had to find alternatives because I try to mitigate the harm.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. John Paul, I said to
Right.
you in voice memo, so there's not anything I haven't said to you in private, but I want to say it out loud.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the possibility you represent. Thank you for allowing other Black fat femmes to see themselves in your story and know that they are deeply
Mm-hmm.
lovable and deeply worthy of a life of ease and a life of comfort and a life of
That's
joy.
it. Yes.
And I hope that regardless of what, the volume of books sold or who wants to talk to you or feature you on this and that, that you never forget that your story will live on long after you're gone, and you will continue to
Mm.
shift the way other Black fat femmes see themselves, and that is the glory of your story.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you, Dr. John Paul, for all that you represent. I cannot wait to meet you in person and get a selfie and a squeeze and a signed copy of your book.
Yes.
Be sure to pre-order their forthcoming debut memoir, Black Fat Femme. It is a must read. And if you're like me and trying to get back into reading, but having to do it with a accessibility component, the audiobook, I'm sure is going to be a T. Okay. It's gonna be a time because Dr. John is naturally hilarious. Check out their podcast as well, BFF, Black Fat Femme Podcast, with their co-producer and co-host, Joho. And
My girl Joho,
you
yes.
can learn more about Dr. John Paul in the show notes. You can visit DoctorJonPaul.com, which is their website. Be sure to connect with them on LinkedIn, Dr. Jonathan P. Higgins, and they also are Dr. on Instagram, if I remember that correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, did I get that right? And all that will be in the show
Yep,
notes.
you sure did.
And for those of you who are tuning in live with the live stream, next week my guest will be Palaska Ramirez, the executive director of Generation Fearless and CEO of Fearless Impact Collective. She is one of my best friends, my ride or die. She was also my stylist. She had a plus size fashion styling consulting business, and she would help me style me for certain photo shoots I did and a campaign I did nationally. And she is an amazing storyteller and advocate and focused on first gen women in the workplace and beyond. And so we're gonna have a conversation about what it means to be fearless at a time of so much things to be fearful of.
Mm.
So be sure to check out the shift live on my LinkedIn next week, or catch the replays across multiple platforms on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you stream your podcast. Again, thank you so much, Dr. John Paul, for your time, your energy, and your story.
Yes, with love. Thank you so much for having me.
Be well.